I'm going to make a motion to allow Councilwoman Newville to vote remotely. There's some parliamentary issue around attendance. So moved. I need a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Fine. All right. Then Ms. Newville, you're eligible to vote now. Will you pass?
Thank you.
That around the roster around, and please everybody name and signature. Welcome. This is my first official meeting. What I'd like to do is as we customarily do. I'm Sam Demas. I'm the chairman of the citizen chairman of the audit committee, and customarily we go around the room and just let everybody introduce themselves. So we'll go this way and then this way.
Lee Cheney, CPA, member of the audit committee. Faulkner Curtis, interim inspector general.
Riyad Ali, city auditor.
Ilana McCoy, deputy city auditor.
Brett Lewis, city auditor.
Rochelle Carter, city auditor.
Leanne Castro, city auditor's office.
Greg Miller, CLA. Renee Alvarez, director of procurement services and interim deputy CAO for administration.
Tony Donald, chief administrative officer. Welcome. Thank you. That's Steve.
Stephanie Lynch, Fifth District City Council. Kristen Nye, citizen member, audit committee.
And Trey Sibley, attorney, citizen member, audit committee.
Rick Edwards, chief of police.
Kate Munson, assistant city attorney. Megan Brown, director of budget and strategic planning.
Deputy director.
Maria Garnett.
Brianna Lumber, Florida.
Jeffrey Siegel, interim fire chief.
Madison McNamara, Port Rich Temple.
Christopher Morris, program operations manager for economic and community development.
Lizzie Weaver, former city employee and currently chairperson of the
Leo Griffin, CPA, executive director of the Insurance Retirement System.
Kia Johnson, senior director.
And legislative manager.
Becky Boyd, director.
Sue Kochansky, operations, procurement, deputy.
Scott Lyons, deputy services. Jason Hart, city operations manager.
And Lee, city manager.
Dennis Carter, senior auditor. Stephanie Coleman, city auditor.
Bobby Benson, director of public works.
Gail Johnson, director of general services.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. And then I've got some specific introductions that I'd like to make. I think we may have done this at the end of the last meeting, but we have two new citizen audit committee members, Kristen Nye, who's well known to everybody. We used to report to her when she was the president of the city council. And she was also a member of the board of the trustees of the Richmond Public Schools. And she's got a very diverse professional experience as a freelance writer and worked for a number of important organizations, the National Academy of Sciences, the Alliance for Telecommunications Industry Solutions, AOL, the Rubber Manufacturers Association. Now she's the owner of Nye Strategies. So if you need strategic communications, crisis communications, or community engagement advice, there's Kristen. Trey Sibley is a partner at Hunt Williams. He's the new attorney, citizen member. His practice is focused primarily on environmental permitting and litigation. He's got a lot of experience across energy, environment, natural resources. He's a Duke grad and a UVA law grad. Odie Donald II. Excuse me?
No, I'm sorry.
Is our new chief administrative officer. Welcome. Odie was appointed to the position on, I think, the 9th of June. He's got extensive experience in municipal government. He served as city administrator for South Fulton and for Augusta, Richmond County in Georgia. He was the chief of staff to the mayor of Atlanta with a very substantial portfolio of primary responsibilities. He's got a distinguished record of civic leadership, and he's got both a BA and an MBA degree from Georgia State. And Mr. Donald, I'd like to invite you to say hello, if you will. as our new CAO.
Well, listen, I'm excited to be here, honored to be here, and looking forward to learning a little bit about Richmond, and really hoping that my expertise can be helpful in kind of resolving some of these audit issues. One of my first orders of business, is, of course, to meet with the council, who is, that legislative body, but also meeting with the auditor. Gave me a briefing of some of the activities here, and we're working diligently to make sure we resolve any of those challenges. So I'm honored to be a part of this body and understand what's going on and making sure that we resolve any of those issues.
Thank you and welcome. And then finally, we have Foster Curtis is the interim inspector general, also a recent appointee. And he is he comes to us from NCIS, the Naval Criminal Investigative Service, where he was a division chief of the Office of the Inspector General. So welcome. We're happy to have your talents here as well. And then last but not least, Amr Abulela, who is over there, is the new joined the audit staff. And he's a pretty strong bet for the most diverse and interesting experience of anybody in the room. He's got deep experience in both audit and consulting at KPMG and PricewaterhouseCoopers. He's been a consultant, and he's worked in Cairo, Doha, Riyadh, Bonn, and Richmond. So happy to have you there. Hope you like it as much as the other places. Anyway, that's the. Sorry.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to say thank you for, I didn't anticipate joining virtually, but at a retreat site and couldn't get back there in time, but thank you. And just to say welcome to everybody who's come aboard there.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I guess the first order of business is to approve the minutes of the meeting of March 11th. We have a motion. So moved. Second. Somewhere.
I'm just gonna abstain since I wasn't here.
Yeah, it wasn't, I'll, that was
Well, then I'll second the motion. All in favor of approving the minutes of March 11th? All opposed? Carries with a heavy majority. Sean Walker, is he remote? Or?
I'm right here.
Okay, oh, he's on there. I didn't see you there. This is the external audit update.
Yeah, Chair and other committee members, I just want to first introduce you to Greg Miller. Greg Miller is a principal with our organization as well. I'm coming fresh off of vacation. I got home a half hour ago. So I asked if he could step up and give you the presentation. And so he's in the room, so we're going to let him talk. I'll listen, and if you have any questions, I'll stand for those.
Well, thanks, Sean. See a slide deck out there, so I appreciate that. We do have a quick slide deck. I'll run through these points, so feel free to stop me if you have any questions or concerns. With so many new faces, I figured it might be relevant in this conversation to kind of go through what an audit is, what we've been engaged to perform, what that kind of means. If you have any questions, that would be good. Just a slide delay. So we've been engaged to perform an audit, a financial statement audit, as well as a compliance audit for the city's financial statements. So out of that, we would express an opinion on whether the financial statements are prepared in accordance with GAAP. GAAP in this scenario is set by GASB, the Government Accounting Standards Board. And we would also be expressing an opinion on the city's compliance with major federal programs as it relates to the uniform guidance for federal dollars. And then we would report on internal controls over financial reporting in accordance with governmental auditing standards. So there's a good number of acronyms in that first yellow column: GAAP, GASB, UG. These are all the different professional standards that we have to abide by in performing our audit. The audit contract also includes a few other assurance type services that aren't necessarily audits. So you have an examination of the census data that's provided to the Virginia retirement system. An examination does result in an opinion, but the next piece is an agreed upon procedures. So those are specific procedures. There's no opinion, no assurance. It's just straight, we perform this procedure. Here's what the results of those procedures are. And the subject of those agreed upon procedures is the sheriff's internal controls. From a communication standpoint, the auditing standards requires to have a beginning communication with those charged with governance, this being part of that. And then also at the back end, having communication with those charged with governance of the results of our audit procedures, and then to communicate any internal control matters we might identify. In any audit, there's always some type of non-audit services. It can be as benign as a result of our audit procedures having suggested audit adjusting journal entries to management. Management will still review those, make sure they agree with any of the results of those journal entries and post those to the balances. We can assist management with the adoption of new accounting standards. I have a couple slides on those I'll be brief on, but just want to make you aware that they exist later on in our presentation. And then also completing the appropriate sections of the data collection forms. That's taking information from your financial statements, putting it in the electronic format the federal government wants it to upload into their database of all single audit reports. We do have those non-audit services can provide a threat to independence. We've identified those, put adequate safeguards to ensure our independence throughout this engagement. So from an audit scope standpoint, as I mentioned earlier, there's a handful of acronyms in there. So our financial statement audit is performed in accordance with GAAS, that's generally accepted auditing standards, which is if you were IB, well, maybe not publicly traded company because they're PCOB, but most of your companies, your not-for-profits that you would think about, these would be the same auditing standards that are applied there. But based on the nature of the city and its component units, there's additional layers of auditing standards, one being the government auditing standards, there's additional layer of standards we have to follow. And then the privilege of being in the Commonwealth, we also have to follow the Auditor of Public Accounts audit specifications for city, counties, and towns. From a compliance standpoint, the main authoritative guidance there is the uniform guidance. So those are the laws and regulations that govern the use of federal awards, as well as the OMB compliance supplement. That the current year supplement has not been released by OMB yet. We're looking forward to that coming shortly. They typically try to shoot for the end of May, but we don't have it quite yet. But that essentially is our roadmap for conducting the single audit. That tells us what compliance requirements we have to test for which programs. That's where that is. Within the city itself, that audit is considered a group audit. So there are multiple components within the city. You have the school boards, the EDA, Richmond Retirement System, et cetera, that all fold into the city's ACFR, the Annual Comprehensive Financial Report. Some of those entities are audited by us, but the majority of them are audited by other auditors. So we do communicate with those other auditors. We will get copies of their financial statements, read those, ensure that they're incorporated with the city's ACFR. But our opinion will make reference to those other auditors. We will not be assuming the responsibility for those audit engagements. I don't know if anyone has an ACFR hanging around. Maybe I should have brought one with me. But the ACFR is a pretty thick document. There's a lot of information in there. It's broken up in a number of sections. There's an introductory section, the financial section, RSI, supplementary information, the statistical sections. The type of assurance that we provide, if any, varies based upon the portion of that document. So our audit is geared around the basic financial statements. That's what you think of when you think of financial statements, your statement of net position, your et cetera, as well as the notes to the financial statements. Those sections we perform procedures and obtain sufficient audit evidence in order to support our opinion on whether those financial statements are prepared in conformity with GAAP. The next type of opinion is in relation to opinion. So that's saying this schedule as it relates to the financial statements is materially reasonable. That's the next level down of type of assurance. And we plan to express an opinion on the CFA, the schedule of expenditure of federal awards, for that piece, as well as the combining of individual schedules and the budget comparison schedules that are in back of the ACFR. The introductory section that I mentioned earlier, as well as management discussion and analysis, the RSI requires supplementary information, and statistical sections we do not provide any assurance on. Some of those, we do read that information. If we identify major inconsistencies with the portions that we do audit, we bring that up with management. But within the professional standards, type of procedures and severity procedures performed on that information do not provide us sufficient audit evidence in order to provide any assurance on that. The city, outside of the ACFR, does create a second document, which is their compliance report. That includes the government auditing standards audit report, which is on internal controls over financial reporting, and then our compliance report over the federal awards. From an internal control standpoint, for government auditing standards, we evaluate internal controls in order to design our procedures that are appropriate for the circumstances, determine the nature, timing, and extent of our procedures. But we do not design those procedures in order to express an opinion on the operating effectiveness of those internal controls. On the compliance side, we also evaluate internal controls over the effectiveness. We do evaluate those internal controls over compliance. For the compliance pieces, we perform tests of compliance for certain laws and regulations as required by the government auditing standards. And then we also plan our engagement to issue opinions on compliance with federal awards. One thing in mind is that there's an attorney at that end of the table. We are not attorneys, so those compliance letters are not legal opinions on compliance. They're opinions based upon what OMB tells us in the complete supplement on what we need to test compliance for. On a timeline, there's not a big drastic change from prior years on what the overall timeline is. We started with the preliminary phase in that April-May kind of time frame leading into June. We're now in that July-August, which is more compliance standpoint, looking at BRS, sheriff's internal controls, single audit type items. As the fall rolls around, we'll be moving into final field work, which is more what you think about of an audit is your substantive procedures of vouching, cash receipts to supporting documentation, performing analytics, et cetera, all geared around to have final issuable deliverables towards the end of October and formal communications of those in the November timeline. From our audit standpoint, from an audit planning standpoint, these are kind of the four pillars of risks that are out there that all form together to become part of our overall audit plan. So our significant or fraud risks, so revenue recognition, there's always a rebuttal presumption that there may be some fraud associated with revenue recognition. Not saying that there is, but the auditing standards say we go in with that thought process in mind as we plan our audit, as well as management override controls. As I mentioned earlier, we evaluate control risk and where that risk is elevated or severe. We'll design tested controls in order to reduce that risk, et cetera, et cetera. So I'll be brief on the theory behind it. I can get more in detail if you want, but for the sake of everyone's time, these are kind of the four pillars that we use to kind of guide our mapping of our From an audit process standpoint, we do a risk-based audit approach, as I kind of discussed on that prior slide. Key big audit areas that we look at are internal controls to help reduce some of those inherent risks that are identified during our risk assessment. Some of those inherent risks would be significant estimates. Those are things that are not tied specifically to an invoice or a cash receipt, but require management's judgment and analysis in order to measure that potential liability or potential asset or amount of that transaction. Debt covenants, complying with all the financial debt compliance items is another significant item that we plan into our audit engagement, as well as compliance with laws and regulations. Within an audit, there are multiple participants, and those participants have varying responsibilities. So those charged with governance have the responsibility for the strategic direction and oversight of and accountability of financial reporting. So although governance may not write the financial statements, it's under their oversight and for accountability of that financial information. Management is responsible for internal controls and preparing the financial statements, developing and maintaining the accounting policies that guide the development of those financial statements, and then to prepare those financial statements at the end of the year. As the external auditor, we are responsible for expressing an opinion on those financial statements in accordance with GAS. That opinion is a reasonable opinion, but it's not an absolute opinion or an absolute assurance that everything is accurate. We don't test 100% of every transaction that the city enters into in a course of a year. There's statistical sampling and monetary value sampling, all that stuff that goes into selecting our samples based on our risk-based audit approach. With that, as any part of an audit, we are always looking for governance input into our audit plan. Kind of putting you a little bit on the spot. My contact information is on the back end of the slide deck. So if there's anything you would like to discuss, we're more than happy to have those conversations. But kind of looking at this committee's thoughts on any specific individual accounts or transactions that you may want us to look into, if there's any potential litigation or operation type activities that you want us to look into or not, if there's any known or suspected fraud, and any kind of threshold that reporting of those type of activities. With that, I will be very brief on these last couple slides here, but there are two new accounting standards that are effective for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2025. So that's this past year that just ended a couple weeks ago. GASB 101, compensated absences, is how we calculate the liability for accumulated sick leave or vacation. The original pronouncement for this is GASB 14, which was way back in the 90s. And the way leave works today is substantially different from the way leave worked back in the 90s. So this accounting standard is to try to catch up with how leave occurs in the government world now versus 30 years ago. The second one is GASB 102. This one is on certain risk disclosures. This isn't so much of what you think your bean counters are doing with calculating stuff in spreadsheets and putting and cross-putting things, but more of a thinking exercise of sitting down of what your concentrations of risks are, what are your constraints in response to those risks, and then disclosing those information. A lot of this information that will come via disclosure based upon this new standard are probably those that are pretty consistent in some of your conversations with underwriters for bond deals. And then those are the last two. Those are the two standards for this year. There are two more currently sitting out there that will be coming up in future years. But for those of you that are want more information on that, we do provide insights on that. So with that, I'll take a moment to pause for any questions or any feedback that you might have. And again, thanks for having me here.
Question, is it your sense that either of these new GASB pronouncements are hard bars to, present a risk of a qualification on statements, or just?
No, I wouldn't think so. Within the environment of government accounting and auditing, we've been in a period of time to where there have been a number of new GASBs coming out. So most accounting shops, audit firms have gotten fully comfortable with every year being a new GASB. There's always something new, so it's kind of, it's almost Tuesday, if you will, but I wouldn't say that, with saying that, I don't want to downplay the amount of time it takes to implement a new GASB. Management, there's a significant, particularly with GASB 101, compensated absences, there's a lot of data mining, a lot of information that they'll have to work with HR to get. So it is a significant lift. It's just we're getting used to doing these significant lifts over the past decade or so.
Thank you very much. Welcome. You're a Richmonder, is that right?
I live in Metro Richmond, yes.
So you're likely to be here in person generally.
Yeah, I was just down the street.
Glad to have you. Yeah.
So we'll go on to the audit office update. So again, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us here today. Before we go into our usual staffing update that we do at this meeting, I just wanted to take a minute to really thank the staff at the Office of the City Auditor for all their hard work and dedication, really over the last quarter. Over the last few months, there's been a lot of very, very, very long days and very long meetings as we work to complete the reports that are presented here today and issue them. And so your hard work is greatly appreciated by me, and I'm sure by members of our audit committee. I also, though, wanted to take a minute to really thank city administration and especially the directors of the Richmond Retirement System and their staff, and the directors of procurement and the director of general services and their staff, fleet division, for their professionalism and quite honestly, their dedication and collaboration throughout these audits to get them completed and help us get to the right answers. And really, for what we observed in this audit, the hard work in making city operations better, more controlled, more efficient. It was great to see and great to work with the teams as we completed these audits. So now on to our staffing update. As was mentioned earlier, we're very excited to welcome Senior Auditor Amr Abulela to the team. You mentioned his background. It's a great background. He's already had some great ideas that he's brought to our team and made a positive impact to the city. So we look forward to seeing what else you can come up with. But we do still have 3 senior auditor vacancies in our office. Now that we're in a new budget cycle and a new fiscal year, we really are double downing in our efforts to fill these positions. In fact, we have multiple interviews lined up this week and next week. So we're really hoping by the end of this recruiting cycle, we can fill all of those vacancies or the majority of those vacancies. And next time around, we will introduce you to more members of our team. So with that, over the last quarter, as you will see here, we've issued 5 different reports. 2 of these reports are related to recommendations that were closed by city administration as they work towards with us to make sure they get implemented. And those reports will be presented as usual by Senior Auditor Leanne Castro. Over the last quarter, we've also completed our audit of the Richmond Retirement System 1099-R process. And that report will be presented by Deputy City Auditor Brett Lewis. We've also completed our fleet fuel card program audit. That will also be presented by Deputy City Auditor Brett Lewis, as well as Senior Auditor Chas Comer over there in the corner. And finally, we'll have a presentation of our audit on the city's procurement card program. And that one was completed by Deputy City Auditor Yolanda McCoy, as well as Senior Auditor Eunice Card. So I pass it off now to Leanne Castro for the update on recommendations.
Thank you. Afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. So this afternoon, I'm going to talk to you guys about our fiscal year 2025 third and fourth quarter follow-up on open audit recommendations. All right. As a part of our review, we interview management personnel and staff, and we review documentation submitted by the departments to support the work that they've done to close recommendations. So the following 7 departments have closed recommendations during these last 2 quarters: HCD, DPU, Procurement, Human Services, DIT, Social Services, and Public Works. We'd like to thank the administration and the department staff for their work in implementing audit recommendations. So during the third and fourth quarters, 22 total recommendations were closed. These consisted of 7 high priority, 8 medium, and 7 low priority recommendations being closed. Some of the recommendations closed were related to the fire hydrant repair and replacement process, warehousing, contract bid line items, price increases, among other findings. As of the end of the last cycle, approximately June 13th, we had issued 18 new recommendations. 12 of these were high priority and 6 were medium. And just note that more recommendations have been issued since then. They're going to be talked about in the upcoming presentations, and those recommendations will be included in our first quarter of 2026 follow-up. So this is a continuous process, and city departments are working with us, and even if they didn't close recommendations this time around, we appreciate all their work as well. Next, I'd like to give you guys just a brief overview of the entirety of the fiscal year 2025 follow-up. So we closed, 59 recommendations were closed by 15 departments. 13 were high priority. 3 recommendations were removed due to no longer being feasible or not applicable because the process has changed. City departments recovered approximately $226,000 from prior recommendations. This includes almost $32,000 recovered for duplicate payments from various audits, various vendors, and approximately $194,000 recovered in past billings for tower leases. As of June 13th, 137 recommendations remained open, and of these, 35 are high priority. And this number does not include those recommendations that were issued after June 13th. Any questions?
Out of the 35 high priority items, which departments owns the lion's share of that?
Let's see. We have the high priority recommendations that are still open. We have budget, the CAO's office, emergency communications, finance, human services, DPU, DPW, and then the Richmond retirement system. And those are the ones through June 13th. So a lot of departments still have high priorities.
So it's dispersed.
Yes.
No one's carrying like
Right.
15. Okay, got it. All right.
And again, the departments are working with us very closely. We've gone to the quarterly process to kind of keep working together. And they are working with us. I especially wanted to point out, DPU has been working with us fantastically throughout the process in, understanding the recommendations, getting them closed. And it's been a very good relationship in working through the recommendations as they've, their number has come down. So that's what I really want to point out is because they have a lot of recommendations because we audit them a lot. That's the reality. The more we audit you, right, the more recommendations you're going to have. And so they've done a great job working with us throughout this process.
Thank you.
So go on to the next one.
But actually, let me preface this. I was going to say, I talked to Riyadh at the beginning, but I think I'll preface this. Riyadh's approach to auditing is to go deep and to maybe because of the amount of time it takes to dig deep, to have less volume of reports, but have longer, more complicated ones. That puts a burden on the members of the audit committee to study up on the reports, which one of them was 61 pages this week. Because what Riyadh and the team want to do is not spend the whole afternoon reading the audit report, but rather give a high level overview and then rely on us to have paid enough attention to ask questions and probe. But there's an implicit question there, which is, as we go through this today, I want each of you to let me know if it's too much or too little. We ought to be able to agree as a team on what's just the right touch here. I've had the benefit of an advanced meeting with Riyadh and the team, so I'll ask less questions today, but I think that's an important thing. It's a lot of homework to do, but as Rochelle sends you those reports, let's set aside the time and read them and write down your questions so we can make the best use of everybody's time in this room.
Pass it on to Brett Lewis for the risk retirement system. And again, all our presentations are high level.
Yes, thank you, Riyadh and Mr. Chair. As I said, this is the Richmond Retirement System 1099R audit. I'd like to first start by thanking the retirement system, the management, as well as their staff for their assistance throughout the entirety of the audit, as well as our staff that worked on the audit. Okay. A little bit of background. The objective of the audit was to evaluate the timeliness and accuracy of the year-end 1099R process through the Richmond Retirement System. The scope was the 13-month period ending January 31st, 2024, as well as the current operating environment. So the retirement system issues 1099R forms reflecting prior year's distribution of retirement benefit payments. And in calendar year 2022, bonus payments were issued, which management noted was the first bonus issued for retirees. Bonuses were misclassified as non-taxable in the retirement system, impacted the 1099R forms, and that is the reason that we were asked to come in and perform this audit. And another area to note is identifying deceased retirees and collecting payments made after death. Retirement's made aware of deceased retirees from beneficiaries, relatives, funeral homes, estates, as well as internally, they can review obituaries and they receive reports from a vendor, which helps them identify deceased retirees. And then once identified, retirement turns them off in the system. And if payments occurred after death, the retirement is responsible for collecting those amounts. And their process includes placing stop payments on any outstanding payments, calculating the payments made after death, logging those amounts, and then sending letters and reaching out to the beneficiaries to attempt to collect those additional payments. In overall conclusion, during calendar year 2023, retirement updated its process for uploading the supplemental payments to ensure they were input as taxable, correcting the issue from its prior year. Also, the retirement system's processes for calculating retiree benefits and the 1099-R forms were found to be accurate for those that reviewed during our audit. However, we did find that the retirement system failed to prevent, detect, and recover improper payments to deceased retirees, and we identified deficiencies in the management of the deceased retirees collection process. So the retirement system made approximately $550,000 in benefit payments to 44 deceased retirees or deceased members, which approximately $415,000 was not recovered at the time of the audit. The retirement system did not identify the deceased retirees in a timely manner. They were relying on a report that actually wasn't identifying all the deceased employees. They did transition to a new report in February of 24, and it identified retirees that were deceased in prior years. And one thing we did note that some of them were not identified. Did note that some of these employees were identified in the old reports. They just weren't identified and turned off by retirement. And while some payments made after retiree's death are expected in any retirement system, these payments should be identified and recovered in a timely manner to prevent financial losses to the retirement system. And having said that, it flows into the second one, in which the retirement system did not adequately manage overpayments, resulting in uncollected outstanding amounts totaling approximately $415,000. And this included using incorrect calculations on what was to be owed back to the system. Some documentations for system reversals or collections were not supplied. They weren't tracking all the payments that were made after death. Management was unaware of the tracking requirement and noted that the employee responsible was working in isolation. They didn't have some of the first and second collection letters that were to be sent, and then some of the letters that were sent did contain inaccurate information. Also, we noted that the retirement system did not timely inform the board of trustees about overpayments to deceased retirees. This limited their ability to provide effective governance and policy oversight. But once they were made aware of the observations during the audit, the board was notified of payments. And although the board does delegate the responsibility of operations to the retirement system staff, the board ultimately remains accountable for ensuring that errors are corrected and that the correct benefits are paid as per city code. And lastly, we noted that the overpayment collections policy contained inaccurate information, as well as was not specific enough to guide the responsible staff for completing the collection process. We noted that the policy hadn't been updated since 2014. It directed staff to use the incorrect calculations. It didn't clearly define when certain collection activities should take place or who was responsible. And it was not an established criteria for writing off the accounts other than no response being received to the collection. So we did note that management reported actions they were taking on the issues, and that included investing in new systems. Prior to the start of the audit, they transitioned to that new updated death report to improve the identification of deceased retirees. They're also working to incorporate a new system that will help them identify next of kin to assist them in making collections. They're also working on updating the SOP and improving the oversight process by including weekly meetings to review what payments have been made and how the collection activities have been going, revising the overpayment collection process to establish a more structured approval workflow, and improving the collection process. Before the audit finished, they'd already started issuing new collection letters with updated amounts. Also, we're starting to implement a new tracking process to better monitor those outstanding payments as well. And then this as well as updating the board of trustees about any old payments. And we'll review these implementations, the implementation status of these reported corrective actions during our quarterly audit. In conclusion, we issued 9 recommendations, 8 of which were high priority with a 100% concurrence rate. And the recommendations included establishing and implementing a formal process to improve the identification and verification of deceased retirees, reviewing payments to the deceased retirees and working to collect those payments, collaborating with board trustees to clarify the oversight responsibilities and timeframes, as well as updating the collections policy. Questions?
Thank you, Brad.
Yeah, so no, I normally we give an opportunity if you want to, you guys want to speak to anything, before you guys have some questions.
Leo Griffin, Executive Director. This is Kia Johnson, Senior Deputy Director. Paying deceased retirees is a outcome of running a pension plan. Staying on top of it is an internal control procedure. So we were using what we believe to be the best software out there, a company by the name of Berwyn, known as the gold standard. However, the challenge for us was that privacy laws in the United States changed, and the companies that offer the software to tell us who's alive, who's not, aren't able to get the information like they were a decade ago. So Security Administration has locked down on that. So you wind up with these companies that sell you data that are relying on obituaries. However, not everyone files an obituary. Therein lies the challenge. The breakdown in the internal controls is different. There were issues within my department where the employee did not send the second letter. In all cases but one, the first letter was sent. So in other words, when we find out that someone's dead, we stop the pension immediately, and then we issue a letter. If we don't get a response within 30 days, we issue a second letter via certified mail. And the breakdown occurred with those letters. That has been corrected as of today. As the audit committee staff have mentioned, we transitioned to a new software program. We were an early adopter of this. It is more robust, but there isn't a software system out there today that can give us 100% accuracy on is a person alive or dead. So it's a challenge again that every pension plan faces. Our role as management is to make sure that the internal controls are in place. There was a breakdown, those controls have been enhanced.
What software does the VRS use?
The same as us, CertiDeath. There's roughly a dozen pension plans in the state of Virginia. 3 of them adopted CertiDeath, and we are one of the 3, and we're an early adopter. They use CertiDeath.
How many pensioners do we have?
4,400, roughly 4,400. So we're processing 4,400 checks, debits every month.
And then it's a hard question, but on average, how many deaths, terminations do we have in a year?
A year, a couple hundred a year. Yeah.
Business opportunity.
Are you having any rollout to the VRS out of your, I know that was one of the options. People could transfer from.
Sure, yeah. The separate question there, the deadline for city employees to move from RRS to VRS was December 31st of 24.
That's correct.
RBHA had a different date, but RBHA is smaller. Their deadline was June 30th. I haven't seen the numbers yet. That'll, when the actuaries produce the valuation, they'll give that report to the board. I don't think it was a large percentage of people that moved. All new employees go effective January 1. The ones that went primarily were in the 401A defined contribution plan. That's just in a way like a 401K. It's just a different section, as you know, of the Internal Revenue Code. You don't have the challenges in a defined contribution plan that you do in a complex DB plan. So I would say a good large amount of people in the 401A went over to the hybrid plan at VRS, a more expensive plan, a more robust plan. It'll pay them more. It'll cost the city more. Costs will rise over time. But yes, a large percentage went from there. DB to DB, not near as many. DB meaning defined benefit.
I have a question.
So with the 415K that's gone per the report, so is there we can't get any of that back? Or, and second, two-part question, isn't that illegal for somebody to take benefits of a person who's deceased?
Okay, so two-part question. I'll handle the second part question first. I'm not an attorney, so I can't say whether or not it is legal or illegal. I will say it's a common occurrence in every pension plan. We're not aware of any fraud. I can't stand here and say, well, a family member intentionally took that money. The circumstances are different in every single case. Many times we have retirees that tell their spouse, when I die, that money passes to you. But Virginia is not a community property state, it's a common law state. So the spouse does not have to sign off for that at retirement. So the spouse believes that that money is theirs. Employee dies, spouse does not. Is that fraud? Is that illegal? I'm not an attorney, I can't answer that. The first part of your question. So the net amount was around 415,000 over a very long time period. You want to talk about the age of some of these? Did you ask about recovery on the 415?
Yeah. So, and then we work with Brett and Bob extensively. A lot of these people died prior to like 2015, 2014. We did try to collect. We sent letters to them or to the states. Some monies were recovered. The largest one is one that we got a portion of the money back. Some information from the person's attorney say that they thought that money was there, so the money had been used for nursing facilities. So we are trying to collect, but some we don't get any communications back. Those estates are closed, so they've been dead for some time. So we are, but efforts are doing. We were able to catch up with all the letters that had not been sent or weren't in the files. We were able to do that, but some we just won't do.
Sometimes the letters come back.
Right.
We're now using a new system to try to find the next of kin. Do they have legal liability? I don't know. Do they answer the letter? Sometimes. It's an age issue, I think, with the 415, meaning many of the items in the audit that were discovered, the person died a long time ago. Trying to recoup that money has been difficult.
Is there either an internal policy or a accounting rule that tells you when you just write those off?
Well, as far as writing off, would be when it's deemed uncollectible. And as far as an internal policy, we follow our procedure states send the second letter. And we do try to make contact after that point, but letters come back, family doesn't respond.
I guess I'm just trying to get at, when do you decide you've got $415,000 out there, some of which is probably in the category of we've sent the 2 letters, we've done everything we can think of, but it's not written off. And who makes the decision, and how do you make the decision to say, okay, we're cutting these off and we're.
Sure. He and I discussed that on at what point do we believe that we've exhausted our capabilities of trying to collect money. So we discussed that. There isn't an exact science as to when. Each situation is different. The largest one, 150 NAP, spouse, I believe went 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
We turned it off when we were notified. The person was dead for 6 years before we knew it. Again, every one of these was turned off at notification. It's a matter of how long does it take us for the software to tell us that the person's dead? Write the letter, get a response back from the attorney, as Kia said. On the 154,000, the attorney sends a check for 50,000. Let us know that the spouse thought that that money was theirs, and that any remaining funds are being used to pay the nursing home. That's a tough call I'm very happy we got the 50. Are we going to get the 100? I doubt it.
Well, so, but you haven't written it off yet.
From an accounting standpoint, it was expensed when the pension was, when the pension was incurred, it was expensed in that fiscal year. We don't bring it back on the books as an accounts receivable. It would be immaterial. We're talking about $500,000 on about 865 million paid over the time period. So there isn't an actual accounting entry to write it off. We have a spreadsheet that tracks these. We don't ever lose track of that.
No, well, I'm just thinking of a more practical question, which is when do you get to the point where spending any more time on it exceeds the probability, the probability weighted likelihood that you're actually ever going to recover anything? Because that seems like a reasonable, just in terms of functional efficiency, that seems like a good time to make that determination and be done with it. Clean up the books and then tighten up the system after.
And that is what we've done. I mean, I appreciate your comment as a cost benefit rule. How much time would we spend on trying to collect, say, $100,000 paid to a deceased person who died 8 years ago? We're not going to spend a lot of time on that beyond our procedures of 2 letters, maybe another one if we think that we can get there. We don't have the hard, fast rule. We look at each one individually. On the one with the person in their nursing home, it's possible that when she dies, the attorney will send us more money. He didn't have to send us that 54. He did. So on that one, we still keep, in a way, it's open on the spreadsheet. But we're not actively communicating with them. That would be a waste of time. I hope I answered your question.
No,
I think
helps.
each one is handled individually. On the newer ones, meaning since, the audit was dealing with a time period that ended a year or two ago, with the newer software, there's been great improvement on getting notified in a timely manner. But there's always going to be overpayments. There's always going to be a delay in us being notified, unless that family picks up the phone and calls us. There's not one software program out there that can tell you exactly when the person died. Unfortunate, but if we were wind the clock back 15 years, we could probably get 100% accuracy on it.
Thank you. Questions? Thanks very much.
Thank you.
The next audit we do more. We do a program?
Thank you. So like Brian said, this is the Fleet Fuel Program audit. I'd like to thank the Department of General Services and Fleet Management Division for their assistance throughout the audit, as well as our staff who worked on the audit, Chad, who you'll be hearing from shortly. A little background on it. The objective of this audit is to evaluate the internal controls, the monitoring and efficiency of the fuel usage for the city's fleet. And the scope of the audit was the fiscal years 23 and 24, as well as the current operating year. So the fuel program is managed by the Fleet Management Division, and that division was within the Department of Public Works. However, as of July 1st, 2024, they transferred to the Department of General Services. The fuel program provides city employees with fuel to support their job responsibilities and monitors, manages, and controls the fuel usage. The area is managed by an operations manager, and the program itself is led by a fuel administrator, the centralized level. And they provide the centralized management as well as a policy guidance for the fuel process. And then at the department level, there are fuel custodians across the city. During the scope, there were 49 fuel custodians who were responsible for reviewing the transactions, managing the PINs, and enforcing compliance at their individual department levels. So Fleet supports vehicles and equipment fueling through a vendor contract that includes access to 15 fueling stations across the city. Fiscal years 2023 and 2024, the city purchased fuel totaling approximately $3.1 million, $3.4 million, respectively. The city also had 2 other fueling contracts, one for bulk fuel, where bulk fuel is delivered to sites, including the cemeteries, as well as contract to order compressed natural gas for the vehicles that consume. So there are two, as you'll see on the bottom, there's two important aspects to get fuel. There are the fuel cards, which are assigned to vehicles or supervisors. The ones assigned to supervisors are used for emergencies or to fill gas cans. And then there's the personal identification number or PIN that's assigned to an individual. So the fuel card is used to track what is being fueled, whereas the PIN is used to track who is doing fueling. And then the third element that's needed when you go to the pump is the odometer reading. And that kind of helps track how much has been used for that vehicle for that purpose from the last fueling to this one. And now I will turn this over to Jesse.
Thank you, Brett, and good afternoon, everyone. The city's fuel program plays a critical role in supporting essential government services. The city has established foundational elements of the fuel program, including a vendor contract, policy documents, a fuel administrator, and a designated fuel custodian. The overall conclusion of this audit is the city's fuel program lacks the controls necessary to ensure accountable and efficient use of taxpayer dollars. Additionally, internal controls over fuel card usage, monitoring, and oversight were inconsistently applied. The absence of defined review procedures and use of exception reports limited the city's ability to identify unauthorized transactions, and the city did not perform effective oversight of its fuel vendor contracts. These weaknesses resulted in at least $44,000 of questionable transactions and multiple individuals being referred to the OIG. The audit consisted of 3 findings. Finding 1 states internal controls over the fuel program were ineffective. For example, the fleet division and city departments inadequately monitored fuel usage and did not detect irregular transactions. During the audit, we noted that the fuel administrator was responsible for requesting, managing, and receiving fuel cards. This level of access creates a single point of control. We also noted that fleet did not provide training to fuel custodians or use exception reports to assist with identifying patterns of irregular behavior. Additionally, the departments did not have a formal procedure for reviewing fuel transactions. However, they were responsible for reviewing a large number of transactions. Fuel custodians were also reviewing their own transactions. Secondly, the city lacked a structured approach to monitoring fuel card transactions, allowing irregularities and policy violations to go undetected. For example, fuel purchases were made outside of normal work hours. Odometer readings were not monitored by fleet or the departments, which resulted in one employee using 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as the odometer reading in 130 transactions. Departments were not reviewing tank capacities, retail fuel access was not managed, and fuel card inventory was not reviewed for inactivity. Lastly, the city did not effectively manage fuel pins. This resulted in pin sharing, employees with multiple pins, unused pins, and former employees with active pins. For example, the OCA identified at least 9 pins that were used after the associated employees separated, totaling approximately $10,000. These weaknesses led to inconsistent oversight and at least $44,000 in questionable transactions. Finding 2 fleet's fuel card policies and procedures were inadequate, leading to ineffective guidance for departments. The OCA noted differences between written policies, fleet's expectations, and the department's practices. These differences were identified in the supervisor fuel cards, odometer readings, and rental fuel cards. Finding 3 states the city did not adequately manage the fuel contract, including properly reviewing invoices and ensuring only contracted fuel types were purchased. The OCA noted that invoices were not reconciled against transaction reports. Non-contracted fuel types were purchased. This led to the city purchasing approximately $100,000 worth of non-contracted fuel types, and fuel prices were not verified against contracted terms. This resulted in an incorrect applicable fee amount charged to fleet. In response to this audit, management has taken steps to address the findings. They have provided the OCA with fuel exception reports to support ongoing monitoring, documentation of fuel card and PIN inventories in process, and records of a more detailed review for fuel transactions. These corrective actions will be a part of the FY '26 follow-up review. In conclusion, we issued 9 recommendations, with 5 of them being high priority. We received 100% concurrence. Some of the recommendations include update, enhance, and implement a formal fuel policy that defines review criteria, documentation standards, escalation procedures, and responsibilities across evaluate the city's current tools to provide sufficient functionality to support effective fuel oversight, ensure that fleet adopts a data-driven oversight process for centralized fuel management, and develop a formal fuel training program for fleet employees, pen holders, and fuel custodians. Thank you. Are there any questions?
This may be a question, but have you guys identified a program that's the state of the art?
Yeah, so yeah, that was part of the recommendation. You know, there's some, we spoke with Director Johnson about some things that are out there, what we've used in the past, what other cities use, but the recommendation was to do that research and figure out what best works for the cities. The recommendations were kind of what you can do now with the program you currently have in operation and how to better control it. And then look into the future, what kind of program would make it a lot easier to manage it. You know, there's a lot of programs out now where it wouldn't need so many man hours to review transactions and run reports, where it could just be all more automated. You can use those staff hours for other purposes. And that's kind of the two-pronged approach, the present and the future of the recommendations.
Just imagine that the future requires a pretty significant capital, like you could do thumbprints and RFIDs on cars and lots of things that would really constrain the latitude of people to cheat the system, but there's a big capital expenditure that goes with that.
Yeah, and in our recommendation, things we discussed, it was, you know, any program you may change to, we just want to be sure it's an integrated approach to your whole fleet management, not just fuel, but you use something that manages your entire fleet operation. And Ms. Johnson could probably speak more clearly to.
Yes, and Gail Johnson, General Services Director. Welcome our new fleet manager, Jason Hahn. He's working diligently with helping to get this moving forward. We are looking at, to your point, new technology. You know, years ago, we had the rings. I'm sure that has advanced in technology, so we're looking at that again. We've connected with our risk management department. They do the driver training for your license. We're adding using the gas PIN cards that we currently have as part of that training. We're also working with HR to have an annual training in order to remain a user. You have to annually go back and refresh on that training. We're also working with HR on having as the separation checklist to include the PIN card. We turn this off when you leave. We turn off your DIT. We're adding your PIN cards to turn that off. We've also talked with our vendor to get more information from the reports that they may be able to provide with us so that we can better manage what's happening out there at these pumping stations. And then we're also looking at changing some of our policies to make sure that the fuel custodians out in the department know what they need to be doing with more oversight within the fleet on this fuel program.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So if there were 1,960 fuel cards during the time you guys audit and 2,535 PINs, are we still at that number? And is that an appropriate number for what's going on in the city of Richmond and how many people should be having access to, you know, taxpayer funded fuel?
So we have about 2,200 vehicles in our fleet, and each vehicle would need a card. The cards are attached to the vehicle. The PIN number is attached to the person. So every driver would need a PIN number, even if they don't. So for instance, I don't drive a city vehicle every day, but I have a PIN number. If I happen to drive a city vehicle and need gas, I need to be able to pump gas in that vehicle. So we can look at, again, where do we get rid of the PINs and go back to technology that says, here's the vehicle, and the technology in the pump knows what to pump and allow to pump in that vehicle. So to answer your question, the numbers, yes, are what they are now. And I think that's a fair number when you look at the number of vehicles we have and the number of employees we have driving these vehicles. Would have to have that.
And the answer is we've got to get a tech solution in here like yesterday, right? So Henrico uses Zoom.
The ring.
They use Ring. How much is their annual spend for that contract?
So we don't use the ring system right now.
I know we don't. Yeah, but I'm asking Henrico.
Henrico mentioned
how
that.
much?
I'm not.
Yeah, you don't know, but I mean, that would be a good number to know because as the mayor builds his budget, he's got to kind of crystallize things by September, right? So
Yeah,
it's
so
probably be good.
On the surface,
I would chime in to say that we're looking at a variety of technology options. The ring is one, we discussed that, but there are a few out there.
Others, yeah.
And as we think through what we do in future budgets, we'll be looking at that as an option. Director Johnson has already presented some cost proposals and things that we can look at. So those are part of the remediation process.
So it's a reality that we could get the system in place by next year.
So it's way too early on my second or third day on the job. It's something that we had that in the two jurisdictions I was at previous to here, but we do have a large amount of vehicles and staff that has to be retrained. So even if we were to bring it on, deployment is another process. We want to make sure we do that correctly. So for now, I think we understand what the problem is and what the immediate issues are, but this isn't something that we'll resolve overnight.
Just to add on to what you, I don't want to speak for Ms. Johnson, but I do believe you guys are in the middle of a pin inventory, right? So that some of those numbers would.
Correct.
Yeah,
That's right.
but something to keep in mind is we're actually moving towards technology. We are installing GPS systems into a lot of these vehicles, and there is the possibility of us integrating those two. So the technology is already starting to go. We may be able to push this to and not have a huge fuel cost of almost $500,000 to go with fuel rings. So.
I would just like to say that I understand, a software, all of those things, and I understand that budget implementation, I mean, we could be talking 2 years out, right? So I think in light of all the fraud that has happened with this program, we just need to make sure that there are enough controls that people who have access to these cards and vehicles don't just think this is a blip and like, oh, the audit came out, okay, we're gonna be good for the next month, and then we can go back to doing what we were doing. And I know that some of the cases were passed up to the IG, which is great, and maybe we'll recoup some funds there, but this is serious, this is stealing. So I just want to make sure that there are enough things in place while we're waiting to get a more tech savvy system in place.
And most of it we referred over to the IG and to law enforcement, and they're working through that.
Yeah, welcome aboard. Excited to be here. P cards.
Good afternoon, everyone. We'll be doing a presentation for the purchasing card project that was recently completed. First, I wanted to thank the Department of Procurement Services Management and staff for their full cooperation and quick responses as we asked for documentation and information throughout the audit. Also, I'd like to thank the city administration and procurement management for their swift response and corrective actions that they took in regards. As we communicated with them the observations and the findings, they took swift actions and made some additional corrections before the report was even finalized. So I wanted to thank you for that. Also wanted to recognize our audit team Ms. Carter and Trim for their work on this project this fall. A little background about the city's P-card program itself. It was implemented in November of 2018, and it's administered by the Department of Procurement Services. The P-card is a Visa charge card, and it allows departments to purchase materials, supplies, services, business travel-related expenditures. The city participates in the Commonwealth of Virginia's P-card program with Bank of America. P-cards allow the city to streamline the procure-to-pay cycle. It improves efficiencies by simplifying approval workflows, reducing paperwork, enables quick purchases, fast payment turnaround time for vendors. But it's important to recognize too that the P-cards do carry a risk of misuse if they're not strongly controlled with proper oversight in place. The P-card itself is a payment tool and is not meant to be a substitution for procurement. As noted on the screen, you can see there's been a steady increase in the program value and transactions between 2020 and 2024. There's a program that's the P-card program itself is a coordinated effort between the user departments and procurement services. Each department is responsible for developing their own approval procedures for the P-card purchases. Once the cardholder makes a purchase, those transactions are uploaded into Bank of America Works, which is the P-card system. The cardholder is responsible for going in to review those transactions, upload supporting documentation, allocate the transactions to the appropriate accounting codes, and then sign off on the transaction. There's also a second level of approval within the department. The assigned approver is responsible for reviewing and approving those transactions. There's a third level of approval that happens within the Department of Procurement Services. And they go in, they review the transactions, sign off in the system, and then the approved transactions are batched and uploaded to our financial system to initiate payment to the Bank of America. For this audit, we identified the P-card program and the card usage itself lacked effective internal controls to ensure proper use of public funds. We identified weaknesses in the internal control framework that led to questionable expenditures, some of which were forwarded to the Office of Inspector General for further review. I wanted to point out that those transactions that were forwarded to the OIG included both P-card and accounts payable transactions. I don't know if that's false. For those transactions that were referred over to the OIG, there was limited details in the report, and so we won't cover a lot of the details here in this presentation. We can discuss some of the causes that allow some of those transactions to occur, and Eunice will cover those in her part of the presentation. As I said earlier, the city administration and procurement management, as we pointed out, the observations took swift action, including personnel changes. They did a reset of the P-card program. On the slides, they identified several key items or actions that have already been taken and completed, including reducing the number of active cards. There was a significant reduction in those cards back in May. Also kind of reducing the use of the cards and what they could be used for, as well as implementing best practices. They've also acquired a third-party automated tool that's going to help them to continue to review transactions in more details. The city also launched a web-based tracker. So there is a tracker online. You can go visit that, look at the activities that have been taken, things that are to come. Those are all outlined on the city's website. Doing the reset program with the P-card, some of the items that procurement is going to focus on, reviewing and revising policies and procedures, updating training. They also are going to be looking at coordinating with other department policies as they relaunch and the program back online, and also seeking to prohibit the use of third-party platforms like your Venmo and your PayPal. And again, there is a website. If you haven't taken a look, link is on the city's website. You can go out to it, and it does give you quite a bit of activity that is happening. So now I'm going to turn the presentation over to Eunice. She's going to discuss the observations.
Thank you, Yolanda. Good afternoon. So during the course of the audit, our team identified questionable expenses. At least $5 million of the questionable expenses were referred to the Inspector General's office for further review. These expenses include both P-card and accounts payable transactions. We identified an additional $232,000 of questionable expenses that were not reported to the OIG's office. They include items such as lack of support documentation, a lack of clear policy guidance in order to determine the allowability of a transaction, overpayment on contracts, and unallowable expenses. There were four main categories for the policies and procurement risks that the team identified. The first risk is the city's single quote limit of $50,000, which was 5 to 10 times higher than peer localities in the Commonwealth of Virginia. This high limit reduced open competition among vendors because only one quote was required. The city's single quote threshold should align with the internal control framework. The second risk is the use of third-party payment platforms, such as your Square, your PayPal, and your Venmo. Vendors paid through these methods were not required to be registered with the city or be vetted by procurement before the city does business with them. We observed several different vendors registered under the default name in Square as My Business. This made it very difficult for us to see who was actually being paid. Third, there were existing policies that were unclear and they were inconsistently enforced. And the city lacked a discretionary spend policy, which contributed to a lot of the questionable expenditures we saw. The oversight and the review of the P-card transaction at the departmental and the procurement service level was not consistently effective. Some of the root causes we identified, there were some approvers that did not have documentation or the knowledge of the business need. There were some approvers that were responsible for reviewing their supervisor's transactions. Some approvers may have been assigned too many cardholders, which limit their ability to thoroughly review transactions. The P-card transactions were reviewed in a time. The P-card transactions, some of the P-card transactions we saw weren't reviewed in a timely manner, increasing the risk that improper or unauthorized purchases would go undetected. Our team also identified some weaknesses in the issuance, configuration, and deactivation of the P-card. At the time of the audit, DPS had one employee responsible for the entire P-card program, from the application approval, card issuance, the configuration, transaction approval, and the payment of the P-card bill, creating a risk due to the lack of segregation of duties. Adequate processes were not in place to ensure proper eligibility prior to the P-card being issued. P-cards were not consistently configured to restrict prohibited goods and services. Also, we identified that analytics were not performed periodically on card usage to determine whether some cards could be canceled or credit limits modified to meet the operational needs. As a result of the audit, there were 16 recommendations that was issued. The recommendations covered items such as policies and procedures, segregation of duties, approval oversight at the departmental and the DPS level, reconfiguration of system controls, and training. Any questions, comments?
And you want to speak on?
Sure. So for now, we're Director of Procurement Services and DCAO for Finance and Administration. I want to thank the audit team for, digging into this and really providing us a lot of, an understanding of the scope and the magnitude of this. As I've told the audit, and I spoke to the CAO and my staff, the P-card is a benefit here. And the card holder is the first line of defense. The approver is the second line of defense. And then DPS, that processes it in the background, we're that other line of defense. So there was, there's, I'll call it failures at all levels, right? And I think it's provided me a lot of perspective on the gravity of a program like this and how it was rolled out, how it should be managed. We're staffing up right now in that P-card department. We did have one individual that had cognizance over the program, but I had 5 individuals that would come in part-time from the contract side to help support processing, management, to assisting. So, the $5 million of questionable, charges went up. The bulk of that is AP charges. I think 1.1 million of the 5 million is P-card charges. So, either way, it's something that needs to be fixed. We immediately took some action. Talked to the CEO today. We're overhauling this program, and we put a lot of things in place now. Let me talk to policies. We're redoing the P-card policy right now, top to bottom review of that. It's in the process right now. We brought in an analytics firm to come in and provide us additional data around how we do this. I brought in the National Institute of Government Purchasing to come in and provide advisory consultation on best practices on what we should do with this program. And then I think the point was made that the city did not have a discretionary spend policy. So spending was, the only place it was talked to was in the P-card policy, and it was very limited. So, people took the liberties because there wasn't guidance, direction, what I'd call a swim lane to swim in, right? So, they took liberties with that, and we were not. My department was not on top of it. We're building a discretionary spend policy right now. The travel policy is getting a total revamp. As I told the CEO earlier today, the idea here is to have citywide policies and be able to hang my P-card policy on those citywide policies. We should be subordinate to the city policies, and that's what we're doing right now. So just those are just some of the areas that we're working on right now. Totally understand the gravity of this audit report, and we're striving to really make some changes here. And we will see what the rollout looks like at the end of summer. We've reduced the program immensely right now, so that we can work these things in the background, but keep, some, necessitated purchases going. Ford here has been supporting us. We need to support Parks, Human Services, those teams out there who use the card a lot for necessary purchases for the citizens. So we're trying to keep that flow going, just at a much tempered level. I'll answer anything you may have.
Do you expect to have somebody that's in charge of the P-card program, that's just a team of people?
So we hired. Thank you for pointing that out. We hired a supervisor of the P-card program for that department at the end of last year, December, to supplement the one person in there. And we have a rec that is in the process for an additional person. Plus, this company Card Integrity is kind of that AI firm that we've contracted with to provide us reports, data, dashboards on spend per department, per person, per supplier, per wherever. You can slice it and dice it however you need to. So those are some kind of core focus areas on the PCAR department. I'm also hiring 2 compliance managers to do kind of an internal audit for contracts and PCAR and within the department, how we operate just functionally. Have some folks focused on processes, making sure that we're living up to our policies and procedures and so on. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for the update. And I was really happy to read about the whole reset. I think it's great. And thank you for the sort of today, this is what is happening. I noticed in the audit, some departments were given more cards than others. Is that something you're looking at too? And I realized like certain jobs or departments might warrant the need to buy things with a credit card versus, oh, I have to go through an approved vendor and, you know, the time it takes and all of that.
So let me give you an example of the department, Parks and Rec, right? Who is a big spender with the card. But every year for the past, since I've been here for 3 years, we have tried to do a bid for a food program, a USDA food program, for a summer food program for children that Park administers, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've never received any bids, and we put it out. And so Parks becomes that vendor. Parks is renting equipment, Parks is renting vehicles, Parks is getting with catering, restaurants, other folks. So there's this huge spike of expense associated with that.
Right.
We got a bid this year.
That's great.
The program is going to be contracted. Yeah. So I mean that event will, you know, kind of get tamped down a bit.
Right.
But as we roll this out, we're certainly going to be evaluating department needs, business needs, and so on, and have a much more robust evaluation, if you will, on how we not just provide cards, but set limits on those cards as well.
That's great. That's good context to have. And then there were 2 things that stood out to me in the audit. One was the transactions for like PayPal or, you know, all of those sort of invisible transactions, which it sounds like you guys are taking care of.
Right. PayPal, Venmo are no longer admitted. We're not.
Okay, that's great.
The Square's an interesting bird. You know, there's Square, the piece, the little square thing, right? And then there's the application. You can go to a store and purchase with a credit card, and it'll show up as Square.
Right.
So I think we're still working that issue. We're trying to kind of figure out some approaches at how to take care of that. But right now, Venmo, PayPal, they're eliminated. We're not going to accept those. And then we're working with Squares.
Okay. So, and then the other thing that stood out to me was just the food expenses. So I assume that's a big part of your overhaul, is just really clearly defining, you know, what's okay, and, you know, even putting in some things like, okay, if we're buying food for this meeting, we need to know who's here and, you know, what the average cost, or you guys give the average cost, or that kind of stuff.
Right. So the approach there, this is where the DCAO hat comes on, is I'm over HR, I'm over finance, working the travel policy. We didn't have a discretionary spend policy, which will talk to food purchases, limitations on food purchases that I can hang my P-card policy on. So yeah, that's part of the program. And then we've redone meal forms, application forms. We streamlined a lot of the processes, the documentation that we use as well.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Your turn.
And we did, again, you'll hear from him now, but we did refer those over to them, so you'll hear future results.
I do think that there's one piece to add to all of this. Before President, I know that you mentioned earlier, you know, we don't want to gloss over this. You know, these findings from both audits are concerning enough that we've got to make a sea change. So I know we talked about a reset, but I think we've kind of changed our terminology to an overhaul. And it's not just the process with the P cards, it's also when we talk about fleet management as well, we've got to kind of overhaul our processes so that universally we don't have, whether it's the level of waste, fraud, or abuse, that none of those things enter in. So I wanted to follow up on your comment, because I know we went directly to the next piece, but when you look at both of these, there are opportunities for us to have some continuous quality improvement across the program.
That's great.
Well, I would say on top of that, that a steadily recurring theme in these audit reports is a lack of policies and procedures and enforcement mechanisms. And it's interesting to try to think of the history of that. Like, were there ever policies and procedures, and where did they break down? But there's no question that now, if there were, I know how complicated it is. It's a complicated beast that you have to run now. But how you systematically get policies and procedures in place, and then send a signal that the policies are there to be obeyed, and if they're not obeyed, that's going to be a problem.
Well, I think we're starting now. I mean, we've got some great data and information that we can start with. I think this goes back to 2022, is where some of this look started. So you would think that the challenges started before that, right? And so now we're starting to plug the holes and set those lines of demarcation. Now we've got to continue to improve on it and build on what has been found, and not only plug the holes, but create that system that allows folks to plug in. I think our team is ready to do so. And if not, then buckle up and get ready.
Okay, but thank you. Appreciate that.
Sir, from the Inspector General's office, I joined the city April 7th. I've been sitting in the seat as interim Inspector General for roughly the last 6 or 7 weeks. One of the things that we're doing is if you look at our case status, we have 23 open cases right now. We have 2 investigators. So we're growing that. We're growing our office. We're in the process right now. We're in 2 additional investigators. 23 is just not tenable, particularly when you look at complex fraud investigations. So we're growing this office out. We had 4 cases that have been closed as unsubstantiated recently, and we have 8 cases that have been closed. I'm sorry, 8 as unsubstantiated, 4 as substantiated. Of those investigations, the bulk of them are on the waste and abuse side. Pretty much employee misconduct for those 12 cases. We have 6 cases that are, we refer to them as pending cases. They're pending adjudication right now, moving through the court system. And some of those investigations, we team up with RPD and their detectives for the fuel abuse case. And we have 2 cases that are currently have been referred because they're outside of the Office of Inspector General's jurisdiction. I'm absolutely loving the job. I didn't think I was going to. First couple of weeks, I actually considered running away, going back to the federal government. I'm actually enjoying it. Grateful to the city, receiving me with open arms. Uber impressed with the auditor's office. And just with the willingness that all the departments here have to work with the Office of the Inspector General.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
The audit plan. Oh. I'm going to pull up slides for the audit plan. So before we go over the fiscal year 2026 audit plan, I just wanted to remind everyone that the audit plan really is a flexible document that changes, grows, and evolves throughout the year. Some of the main reasons, the main reason the audit plan may change or grow is due to emerging risks in the city, important things coming up that might need an audit right away that we try to respond to right away. Other reasons the audit plan does and can change is due to requests coming in from city council for additional audits, as well as requests coming in from the departments themselves, as has happened a lot recently, and requests coming in from city administration. This year in particular, we do expect, we have a new CAO in place, and he's really doing his assessment and taking a look at city operations. So we do expect we might get some additional requests for audits throughout the year. And so we're going to try to make some time to update the plan as, those requests come in. And if the audit plan does change, as I always do, I will communicate that to you guys through our regular memo process. So jumping into the audit plan, we always start with audits we currently have in progress right now. We're working on right now. We just finished quite a few of them. We have 5 projects open now. The first on the plan is related to the streetlight maintenance audit, phase 2. If you recall, we completed phase 1 back in late December related to some overpayments on contracts and contract management and procurement issues. Phase 2 is more related towards the maintenance themselves of the streetlights. We're in the quality control phase of this audit, so we're hoping to have this wrapped up very soon and issued in the next, upcoming months. We have our warehousing audit, phase 3. This is a long ongoing look at the warehouses across the city. Phase 1 and 2 are related to DPUs, the major warehouses in the city. This last one kind of looks at all the rest of them. They're much smaller, and the process is in place at those warehouses. And this one also is in the QC phase. And Yolanda actually has both of these projects. There's only one Yolanda, so one of them will get priority and be issued at a time. She also needs a vacation, so we'll get to this one done as soon as possible. Next, we have our security of city facilities audit. If you recall, this was originally a contract audit focused in on the contract for security services. We've decided to make it a little more useful for the city now and in the future, and we've expanded it to not only look at contract management and expenditures, but really to look at security overall, the city's practices for physical security at the different sites. And so we'll look at both, overall security at the sites as well as contract issues. We have 2 non-audit services on the plan. I know Mr. Miller described that earlier. These are not audits, they're reviews. They're usually done at the request of city administration or city council. 2 are currently in progress. The first is related to the real estate tax rebate process. Now that the checks have gone out, city administration had asked us to verify that they were accurate, essentially. So it's a quick project where we're just verifying the accuracy of the real estate checks. The second one on the plan was a city council request of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. It's essentially a compliance review. There's a city code that determines how the Affordable Housing Trust Fund should be funded on an annual basis, and we're looking into compliance with that city code. Next, we have the audits, audits that we plan on starting throughout the year. It's a very long list that, some of these will be started later, some of these, depending on how long they take. It's a long, kind of a 2-year plan in all honesty. And this is the part that may change as the CAO does his assessment and some more requests may come in. First on the list, we have a personal property tax assessment and collection follow-up audit. This one is a follow-up to an audit that was done about 1.5 years ago, right before I started. Since then, the city now uses RVA Pay for this process, a new system. So we want to, do this audit and see how RVA Pay has changed the process and if some of the recommendations made were implemented through that new system. We have a fire payroll audit we want to do. There's a new fire payroll system that's been implemented. And so we're going to take a look at that and ensure that firefighters are being paid accurately and their leave accrual balances are calculated properly. We have our continuous monitoring audit. This one is continuous as it sounds. It's our data-driven data analytics audit, where we look at expenditures and we look at both payroll and AP and P-card and all the different expenditures. And we look for non-compliance issues and really any kind of irregularities in the data. Moving forward, this used to be one report, one audit issued. We're going to issue these in phases so that we have a lot more time to look into root causes of any issues we may identify to see what really is going wrong rather than just relying on the data itself to kind of fix the issue, right? Get the cause versus the symptom. We have an Affordable Housing Trust Fund expenditure audit. The original request from City Council related to the funding. This is more related to the expenditures, and we will likely do both of these kind of at the same time. We're going to start this one probably soon. And this is a looking at, do we have proper support for the expenditures, and are they in compliance with the program objectives of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund? We have another compliance audit. This is a finance department refund notification audit. And essentially last year, City Council passed a new ordinance that determines, that requires rather the finance department to notify taxpayers of any overpayments to the city within 90 days. And we're doing this audit to essentially verify compliance with this new city code. We have an accounts payable audit on the plan. It's an important audit, always in auditing. It's a procurement to payment cycle audit. So we look at the procurement side, the department side, AP, and we look at the controls that are in place to ensure that accurate and proper payments go out through the door. We did mention in the P-card audit that there was considerable amount of questionable expenditures on the AP side. So I think we have this as a necessary audit. We want to, start off this year to look at the overall, AP PO process of the city. And we have a facilities maintenance audit on the plan. If we don't, this one may roll into next year or late in the year. Last time we looked at facilities maintenance, really the preventative maintenance of city facilities was about 6 or 7 years ago, obviously prior to me. So it's worth a revisit to look at that process and look at the best practices of the cities if they're in line with, those practices. And so we have that on, we added that to the plan this year. Next is our special projects. These are just the annual projects, that are recurring every year. Of course, we have our cybersecurity vulnerability assessment, where we get cybersecurity recommendations from an expert firm that we kind of contract with. This actually is in progress as we speak. Our quarterly follow-up of recommendations. We got that presentation by Leanne earlier. We're working with city administration, figuring out the right amount. Normally we do these quarterly. Maybe we changed to 3 times this year, maybe 2. We want to make sure that there's enough time to implement these recommendations. So that's a meeting with Jeff and the new CAO about what's the right time frame for the city of these reports to come out. We're going to continue to do our external audit assistance with CLA. A new thing on the plan that's here every couple of years is the service efforts and accomplishments survey, essentially. This is a community survey where we kind of benchmark the results of the survey against peer localities. It's done every couple of years. Last time it was done was, of course, prior to me in 2021. On this particular project, we worked very closely with city administration on this survey so that the questions that are going out that are going to be helpful for city council and for city administration in the future. And so we're going to work with city administration this year to get that survey done. And finally, we have a budget line item just for other projects and requests that come in. We've been getting a lot of requests from departments as they want us to look at different processes in the department. So we have an item for requests from departments, from the CAO, from city council, as well as the auditing standards have changed. And so we got to spend some time sitting down and just rewriting some practices and changing some practices at our office so that we stay in compliance with the auditing standards. I won't spend a lot of time on this last slide. These are some supplemental projects. I always include them in the plan just in case something happens and we do have some other projects to pivot towards. I think there's a lot of ways we could pivot, but some ideas on the plan that we have now. We have a contract audit. Very important to do contract audits, as you guys know from some of the streetlight stuff. We have one that we may be able to do for the an engineering contract with the city, an engineering consultant. We have American Rescue Plan expenditures on here, and if we do this, it would be a small review just to verify that the city has documents to support the expenditures. And then we have a human resources salary request that was made earlier this year by city administration, or rather late last year. And so just look at the HR's process for salary adjustments, and if we have some time, we may move this in depending on the timing of when things can be done. If you guys have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Good work. I mean, you and the audit team, a lot of stuff today. Well done.
Thank you.
I guess, the last thing I'd say is that I still feel like there's been a fair amount of turnover in city government, some of which is associated with the new mayor getting his team in place and some other things that are probably not related to that. But I think broadly, Richmond is on kind of an amazing roll right now. And I'm excited about what we're seeing here because I think there are a lot of things that need to be fixed, but there's an opportunity to fix them in a way that it sets a whole new tone. And that's great. It's great to have your team here working on it. And I appreciate all the departments' support we're getting and the cooperation that I'm hearing we're getting for the work that the audit committee's doing.
Right, it's great cooperation. Honestly, again, departments are calling us, asking questions, asking for audits, which is what how can we improve? That's what we want. Honestly, that's what is happening.
Can I ask a procedural question? So, from time to time in the past, in my previous tenure on the audit committee, we would have old business where we would, do a specific check-in, a little more detailed than what we got today on a specific audit. So, I liked that and was wondering if we might be able to work that into our agenda.
Well, this is part of what I was asking right at the beginning, which is, let's talk about that.
Okay.
The answer is not yes or no. It's help me understand better, because what we're trying to do is make there's so much going on here that we're trying to make good use of a couple of hours.
For sure.
And so let's just talk about what that would be. And then maybe, we're allowed, I guess what, two of us and you are allowed to be in the same place at the same time without a reporter. But maybe we should have, the three of us should have lunch and just talk through that. Because I don't really know how to answer the question without thinking more about it.
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah, we'll just huddle on the side.
And I mean, broadly, if there's things that you guys think you hear and you ruminate on it, and you think we should actually have gone into more depth, or we've got more questions about that might be a way to do it, or there might be other ways to do it with the audit staff, and just make sure that we're getting as much information as we have.
And in the past, again, I've only been here for a year and a half, so my past is a year and a half. For those updates, normally you would let me know which update you want, then I would let the department know, hey, the audit committee is requesting an update from this audit, and they would, enough time so they can prepare something for the audit.
I think that's fine. I mean, I think they're ones that what we want to do is build a culture of compliance and of eyes open. How do we fix this and make the city run more efficiently? And we finally have. I mean, I think we've been through years of sort of broadly issues of morale that made it hard for everybody to kind of get excited and pull together. And I feel like that's changed now, and that's a great thing. And we ought to take advantage of it. And that means being vigilant and thinking of good ideas, how we can think of things that help Riyadh do the job.
Chair Bemis?
Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment I wasn't sure if you were getting to close out, so.
Yeah, we're right at the end. This is a perfect time.
Okay, so first of all, I really wanted to thank Riyadh and his audit staff team for these thorough, comprehensive audit reports of our city departments that have been identified as having major issues, risks, and concerns. Just extraordinary work that's done. And I want to thank you at the same time for also your work with the departments and their representatives in terms of reviewing the recommendations, but also beginning to help highlight some best practices and other kinds of things, whether it's hardware, software, SOPs, training, et cetera, that would help move us to the place we know we all would like to be. And I'd like to thank the administrative staff and all of the department staff for your willingness and your cooperation and collaboration with the audit team, because this is how we get to the resolutions of the challenges that are before us. And we certainly, I think collectively, the staff across the agency, our incoming CAO and other staffers who are onboarding, collectively and collaboratively have the capacity to address these findings, to resolve them, and to, put certainly our infrastructure in overall infrastructure in the kind of setting that we all would like to see. No loss of dollars inappropriately through any of the various avenues that we've seen here. So thank you all. I also absolutely appreciate the receipt of the full audit report. That's very helpful for me. I think, Mr. Chair, you were asking about that. I do have opportunity to have a review and conversation with our auditor, Mr. Ali, prior to our meetings. And so just really want to say thank you. This is, we have a lot before us, but the great news from my perspective, as I look at this table, we have the teams that are up to the task. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I think now, is there any other business that we need to cover?
That was the last item on the agenda.
Is adjournment or?
Yeah, Normally you guys vote for the audit, right? A vote for the, approve the audit plan.
All right, well, so I'll move that we approve the audit plan. Be a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So, done. All right, there you go. And thanks for that, it's a good plan. Now I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. Anybody opposed? All right, thanks so much.
No,
everybody.
Mr. Chair. Thanks.